Captain Vexra pressed his crystalline hand against the viewing portal of his ship and watched the small blue planet spin slowly below. Earth, the humans called it. Such a simple name for such a simple world. The other officers on the bridge made clicking sounds with their throat crystals. In the Zephyrian Empire, this meant they found something funny. Vexra understood why. He had been studying this world for 3 standard cycles now, and the creatures living on it were the most backward species he had ever seen. "Look at them," said Sub-Commander Krilna, pointing at the planet with one of her 4 arms. "They still burn fossil fuels to move their vehicles. Fossil fuels, like cave dwellers." Vexra nodded. The humans did seem stuck in the past. While the Zephyrian Empire had learned to bend space and time thousands of years ago, these humans were still figuring out how to leave their own planet properly. Their rockets were loud, dirty things that barely worked half the time. "Sir," called Communications Officer Zeplo from his station, "I am receiving another transmission from the human leaders. They want to speak with us again." More clicking sounds filled the bridge. The humans had been trying to talk to them for months now. They sent messages in dozens of different languages, as if the Zephyrians could not understand them perfectly. Well, the translation computers had figured out human speech within days of first contact. "What do they want this time?" asked Vexra, though he already knew the answer. "The same thing, sir. They want to join something they call Galactic Civilization. They want to trade with us and learn from us. They keep asking why we will not share our technology." Vexra made the clicking sound that meant he was very amused. Share technology with humans? That would be like giving a child a fusion reactor to play with. These creatures could barely keep their own planet clean. Half of their oceans were full of plastic waste. Their air was thick with pollution. They fought wars over patches of dirt and burned down their own forests. "Sir," said Krilna, "should we respond to them?" "No," Vexra replied. "Let them keep trying. It is entertaining." The truth was that the Zephyrian Empire had already decided what to do about Earth. The decision had been made by the High Council 3 cycles ago, shortly after the first human radio signals had been detected. Earth would become a nature preserve. It was a perfect solution. The humans were interesting enough to study but too primitive to be dangerous. They could be allowed to continue their simple lives while scientists observed them. It would be like having a zoo, but with an entire planet. The Empire had done this before with other primitive species. There was Kepler 438b, where the Glorian creatures still lived in trees and used stone tools. There was Volf 1061c, where the Mytharian beings had just discovered fire. These worlds served as living museums, showing what intelligent life looked like before it became truly civilized. "Navigation Officer Rauku," Vexra called out. "Take U.S. to the human capital cities. I want to update our behavioral studies." The ship moved without sound through the vacuum of space. Zephyrian technology was far beyond anything humans could imagine. Their vessels were grown rather than built, created from living crystal that could repair itself and change shape as needed. The engines did not burn fuel but instead folded space around them, allowing instant travel across vast distances. As they approached Earth's atmosphere, Vexra looked down at the sprawling cities below. The humans had built impressive structures. For such a young species, he had to admit, their tallest buildings reached high into the sky, and their cities spread out like glowing webs across the continents, but it was also crude. The buildings were made of dead materials like steel and concrete. The humans traveled in metal boxes that rolled on wheels or flew through the air burning chemical fuel. They had not learned to work with living materials or to harness the deeper forces of the universe. "Sir," said Zeplo, "we are receiving an emergency transmission from the human city called New York. They are asking us to respond to what they call a first contact protocol." Vexra looked at the massive city below. Millions of humans lived there, all crowded together in their metal and stone structures. They scurried around like insects, completely unaware of how small and insignificant they were in the greater universe. "What exactly are they saying?" he asked. They say they have appointed someone called a Secretary General to speak for all humans. This person wants to meet with us to discuss peaceful relations between our species. The bridge crew made more clicking sounds. The idea that these primitive creatures thought they could negotiate with the Empire was hilarious. What could humans possibly offer that the Zephyrians could want? Their technology was thousands of years behind. Their science was barely beyond the level of children playing with simple tools. Sir, added Zeplo, they also say they have much to offer and want to learn from our advanced civilization. They promise they can be valuable allies. Vexra had studied enough human behavior to understand what was happening. The humans were afraid. They knew they had encountered something far beyond their ability to understand or fight. So they were trying to make themselves seem useful. Like pets hoping their owners would keep them around. It was actually quite sad, in a way. These creatures had no idea how the galaxy really worked. They thought that all intelligent species were like them, struggling and fighting for survival. They did not understand that the Zephyrian Empire controlled 3/4 of all known space and had technology that could destroy entire star systems. Take us down to 1,000 meters above their largest city, Vexra ordered. Let them see us clearly. The ship descended through the clouds, its crystalline hull reflecting the sunlight in brilliant colors. Below, Vexra could see humans stopping in the streets to stare up at them. Some pointed with their primitive hands. Others held up small devices to record images. The ship was beautiful, Vexra knew. It looked like a living jewel floating in the sky, its surface shifting and changing as the crystal hull adjusted to the atmosphere. To the humans below, it must have seemed like magic. They are broadcasting on all frequencies now, sir, reported Zeplo. Hundreds of different messages in dozens of languages. They really want us to respond. What are they saying? Many things. Welcome to Earth. Please do not harm us. We come in peace. Can you hear us? Some are offering gifts. Others are asking questions about our technology and our homeworld. Vexra made the sound that meant he was thinking. Perhaps it was time to make contact. Not real contact, of course. But it might be useful to let the humans know their place in the universe. It would make the transition easier when the time came to establish the nature preserve. Open a communication channel, he ordered, all frequencies. Make sure every human on the planet can hear this. Channel open, sir. Vexra activated the translation system and spoke in the formal tone used for addressing primitive species. Creatures of Earth, we are the Zephyrian Empire. We have been observing your world. Below, the human cities went quiet. Every radio, every television, every communication device on the planet was now carrying his voice. Billions of humans were listening to the first words ever spoken to them by another intelligent species. You need not fear us, Vexra continued. We mean you no harm. However, you must understand your position. You are a young and primitive species. Your technology is crude. Your civilization is undeveloped. You are not ready to join the galactic community. He paused, letting the words sink in. On the ship's screens, he could see crowds of humans gathering in the streets, all looking up at his vessel. Therefore, your world will be designated as a protected zone. You will be allowed to continue your natural development without interference. However, you must not attempt to leave your solar system. You must not try to contact other worlds. This is for your own protection and for the safety of more advanced civilizations. The communication channel filled with hundreds of human voices, all talking at once. They were asking questions, making protests, begging for explanations. Vexra ignored them all. This decision is final, he said. Comply with these restrictions and you will be left in peace. Attempt to violate them and we will take appropriate action. That is all. He closed the channel and turned to his crew. Set course for the outer system. Establish monitoring stations at the edge of their space. I want to know if any human vessel tries to leave. As the ship rose back through the atmosphere, Vexra looked down at Earth one more time. The humans were probably in chaos now, their leaders arguing about what to do, their people frightened and confused. But they would adapt, as primitive species always did. In time, they would accept their place as protected animals in the Empire's cosmic zoo. It was really the best possible outcome for them. Left alone, humans would probably destroy themselves within a few more centuries. Their history was full of wars and environmental damage. By placing them under imperial protection, the Zephyrians were actually saving the species from extinction. "Sir," called Krilna, "the monitoring stations are in place. All human space traffic is now under observation." "Excellent," said Vexra. "File a report with the High Council. Earth has been successfully designated as Nature Preserve 2847. The inhabitants have been notified of their status and restrictions." The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving Earth's solar system behind. In the months and years that followed, other Imperial vessels would visit occasionally to check on the humans and conduct behavioral studies. But for the most part, Earth would be left alone to develop naturally within its cage. Vexra never imagined that 50 years later, those same primitive humans would become the Empire's greatest threat. He could not have known that the creatures he dismissed as backward would one day find a way to drag the mighty Zephyrian fleet down to their level and tear it apart. After all, Earth was just a joke to the Empire, and jokes were never supposed to fight back. 50 years had passed since the day the crystal ships first appeared in Earth's sky. 50 years since Captain Vexra had spoken those words that changed everything for humanity. 50 years of living in a cage made of invisible bars that stretched to the edge of their solar system. Maria Santos stood on the observation deck of Luna Station and stared out at the stars she would never reach. She was born 3 years after first contact, part of the generation that had never known a time when humans thought they were alone in the universe. The generation that grew up knowing they were prisoners. "Another probe just tried to cross the barrier," said her assistant, David Chun, as he walked up beside her. "The Zephyrians destroyed it before it got halfway to Alpha Centauri." Maria nodded, without turning away from the window. She had been director of human space operations for 5 years now, and every month brought the same reports. Humans built faster ships, better engines, more advanced technology. But every time they tried to leave their solar system, the invisible watchers would appear and turn their vessels to space dust. "How many does that make this year?" she asked. 17, David replied. "The Europeans lost their new deep space explorer last week. The Chinese probe lasted almost 6 hours before they got it. And the Americans are still arguing about whether to try again with their new fusion drive." Maria finally turned away from the stars. At 53, she had gray streaks in her black hair and lines around her eyes that came from decades of staring at impossible problems. She had spent her entire career watching humanity bump against the walls of their cosmic prison. "What about the underground projects?" she asked quietly. David looked around to make sure they were alone, then leaned closer. "Project Breakthrough is still working on their quantum tunnel idea. They think they might be able to slip past the monitoring stations without being detected. But the math is, well, it's beyond anything we've ever tried." Maria had heard about Project Breakthrough. Like dozens of other secret programs around the world, it was humanity's attempt to find a way out of their cage. Every major nation had at least one black budget program trying to crack the problem of Zephyrian technology. So far, none of them had succeeded. The worst part was not knowing how much the aliens actually understood about human activities. Did they know about the secret projects? Were they watching and laughing at humanity's desperate attempts to break free? Or did they simply not care what their zoo animals were doing as long as they stayed in their cage? "Ma'am," said David, "there's something else. We just received a priority message from Geneva. The Secretary General wants to speak with you immediately." Maria felt her stomach drop. Emergency calls from the United Nations usually meant bad news. She followed David to the communication center, where a secure quantum link connected Luna Station to Earth. Secretary General Hassan al-Rashid appeared on the main screen, his face grim. Behind him, Maria could see other officials hurrying back and forth in what looked like a crisis situation. "Director Santos," he said without any greeting. I need you to return to Earth immediately. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Sir, the kind that changes everything. How quickly can you get to New Geneva? Maria looked at the schedule display. The next transport leaves in 4 hours. I could be there in 8. Make it 6 if you can, and Director, bring any data you have on Zephyrian ship movements over the past month. All of it. The connection ended, leaving Maria staring at a blank screen. David was already pulling up the transport schedules and checking for emergency departures. Book me on the next available ship, Maria told him, and compile everything we have on alien activity. Something big is happening. 6 hours later, Maria was sitting in a conference room deep beneath the United Nations building in New Geneva. Around the table sat the most powerful people on Earth: presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists. The air was thick with tension and barely controlled fear. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Secretary General al-Rashid as he called the meeting to order. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something unprecedented. Dr. Williams, please explain. Dr. Sarah Williams, head of the Global Space Monitoring Network, stood and activated a holographic display. The image showed the solar system with dozens of red dots scattered throughout. At 14:32 GMT on Monday, our sensors picked up massive energy signatures throughout the outer system, she began. We count at least 40 Zephyrian vessels, the largest fleet we have ever detected near Earth. A murmur ran through the room. In 50 years, the aliens had never brought more than 5 ships at a time to check on humanity. But that's not the most concerning part, Dr. Williams continued. She manipulated the display, zooming in on one section. These ships are not in monitoring positions. They are in what our military analysts call an invasion formation. General Morrison, head of the Global Defense Initiative, leaned forward. Director Santos, have your people detected any change in alien behavior recently? Maria shook her head. Nothing unusual. They destroyed our latest probe attempts as always, but that's been standard for 50 years. No new communications, no warnings, no changes in patrol patterns. Then why are they here in force? Asked President Chun of the Asian Federation. Secretary General al-Rashid pressed a button on the table, and the room's main screen lit up. Because of this. The image showed a Zephyrian officer that Maria recognized immediately. It was Captain Vexra, the same alien who had delivered humanity's prison sentence 50 years ago. He looked exactly the same, his crystalline features unchanged by time. This message was transmitted on all frequencies 6 hours ago, al-Rashid said. Every communication device on and around Earth received it. The recording began to play. Vexra's voice was as cold and formal as Maria remembered from the historical records. Humans of Earth, your species has served its purpose as a nature, preserved for 50 of your years. However, the Empire now requires the resources of your system for a new construction project. You have 30 of your days to evacuate your homeworld. The room erupted in shocked voices, but Vexra's message continued. Transport ships will arrive to relocate your population to designated colony worlds where you will be properly supervised. Resistance will not be tolerated. Compliance will ensure your continued existence as a protected species. The recording ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. Colony worlds, whispered President Okafor of the African Union. They want to move us to other planets, where we'll be even more closely watched, added Prime Minister Nakamura of Japan. Like animals in smaller cages, Maria felt sick. She had always known this day might come, but she had hoped it would be far in the future. The Zephyrians had seemed content to let humanity develop naturally in their solar system prison. Now that was ending. What kind of construction project requires an entire solar system? Asked Dr. Williams. General Morrison pulled up another display. Our intelligence suggests they're building something called a Dyson array. It's a theoretical megastructure that would surround the sun and capture all of its energy output. They want to turn our sun into a battery, said President Chun, his face pale. And Earth is just in the way, added Secretary General al-Rashid. The room fell, quiet as the reality sank in. Humanity was not just losing their freedom. They were losing their home, their history, everything that made them human. They would be relocated to alien worlds and watched even more closely than before. "What are our options?" asked President Okafor. General Morrison looked grim. "Militarily? None. Our most advanced weapons are primitive compared to Zephyrian technology. We've run simulations for 50 years. In every scenario we lose. What about negotiation?" suggested Prime Minister Nakamura. "Perhaps we can convince them to give us more time, or to let us stay in the outer planets." Secretary General al-Rashid shook his head. "We've been trying to contact them since the message arrived. They're not responding to any communication attempts." Maria had been quiet through most of the discussion, but now she spoke up. "What about the black projects? Project Breakthrough, Prometheus Initiative, New Horizon... We've been working on advanced technology for decades." Dr. Williams looked doubtful. "None of them have produced anything that could threaten the Zephyrians. We're still trying to figure out how their shields work, let alone how to get through them. But what if we don't try to match their technology?" Maria said, an idea forming in her mind. "What if we find a different approach entirely?" "What do you mean?" asked General Morrison. "I mean, what if we stop trying to beat them at their own game and force them to play ours instead?" The room looked at her with confusion, but Maria was thinking about something she had read in an old physics paper. Something about reality anchors and the fundamental constants of the universe. "Dr. Williams," she said, "do we have anyone working on exotic physics? Things that might affect the basic laws that govern how the universe works?" "There's Dr. Sarah Chun at the Advanced Physics Institute in Switzerland. She's been working on some theoretical projects that most people consider impossible." "Get her here," Maria said firmly, "right now." "Director Santos," said Secretary General. "Oh, Rashid, what exactly are you thinking?" Maria looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. They were scared, defeated, ready to accept whatever fate the aliens had planned for them. But she remembered something her grandfather had told her when she was young. He had fought in the last World War, before the aliens came. He had said that sometimes when you had nothing left to lose, that was when you became most dangerous. "I'm thinking that maybe it's time to stop being their zoo animals," she said. "Maybe it's time to remind the galaxy what humans are really capable of when they have nothing left to lose." Outside the conference room, deep space monitors were tracking the approaching Zephyrian fleet. 40 crystal ships moved through the void, confident in their superiority, preparing to relocate another primitive species to make room for their grand project. They had no idea that the zoo animals were about to bite back. Dr. Sarah Chun had not slept in 3 days. Her laboratory at the Advanced Physics Institute looked like a tornado had hit it. Papers covered every surface, holographic displays showed impossible equations, and coffee cups were scattered everywhere. Like fallen soldiers in a caffeine war, she stared at the quantum field equations floating in front of her and rubbed her tired eyes. For 20 years, she had been working on theoretical physics that most scientists said was impossible. Projects that pushed against the very foundations of reality itself. Now suddenly everyone wanted to know if her crazy ideas could actually work. "Dr. Chun," called her assistant Marcus from across the lab. "The transport from Geneva just landed." "Director Santos is here," Sarah nodded and saved her work. 3 days ago, she had been a forgotten researcher working on projects nobody understood. Today, she might be humanity's last hope. The thought terrified her. Maria Santos walked into the lab looking like she had aged 10 years in the past week. Behind her came a group of people Sarah recognized from news broadcasts. General Morrison, Dr. Williams, and several other high-ranking officials. "Dr. Chun," Maria said without any greeting, "I need you to tell me if what I'm thinking is possible." Sarah gestured to the chairs scattered around her lab. "Please sit, though I should warn you, my work is highly theoretical. Most of it has never been tested." "Right now, theoretical is all we have," said General Morrison grimly. "The Zephyrian fleet is getting closer. Our best estimates say they'll reach Earth in 25 days. Sarah felt her stomach clench. 25 days to save the human race. What exactly do you want to know? Maria leaned forward. I've been reading about your research into reality anchors. The idea that you could lock the fundamental constants of physics in place within a specific area, is that real? The math suggests it's possible, Sarah said carefully. But we're talking about forces that could tear apart space-time itself if we get it wrong. Explain it to us like we're children, said Dr. Williams. What exactly would a reality anchor do? Sarah stood and walked to her main display. She pulled up a simple diagram showing two areas of space. Think of the universe like a computer program, she began. Everything that happens follows certain rules. Things like the speed of light, the strength of gravity, how matter and energy interact. These are called fundamental constants. She pointed to the first area on the display. Normally, advanced civilizations like the Zephyrians can change these rules in small areas. They can make light go faster, make gravity weaker, or even bend space and time. That's how their technology works. And a reality anchor would stop them from doing that, asked Maria. Exactly, Sarah said, highlighting the second area. A reality anchor would lock those constants in place. Inside its field of influence, the laws of physics would become absolute. Nothing could change them. General Morrison looked interested. So their ships wouldn't be able to use their advanced technology? More than that, Sarah said, getting excited despite her exhaustion. All of their advantages would disappear. Their shields work by bending electromagnetic fields. Their weapons manipulate quantum states. Their engines fold space. None of that would function inside an anchor field. They would be stuck with the same physics as everyone else, Maria said slowly. Exactly, and that's where it gets interesting, Sarah continued. Because humans have spent 50 years building technology that works within normal physics. We know how to make kinetic weapons, nuclear reactors, chemical explosives. All the crude, simple technology they've been laughing at. The room was quiet for a moment as everyone absorbed the implications. Could we build one? Asked Dr. Williams. A reality anchor, I mean. Sarah hesitated. The theoretical framework exists, but the power requirements are enormous. We would need to channel more energy than most small stars produce. What about all the nuclear reactors on Earth? Suggested General Morrison. Could we link them together? Not even close, Sarah said, shaking her head. We would need something like every nuclear reactor on Earth, plus the fusion reactors on the Moon, plus maybe the entire power grid of the solar system. What about the secret projects? Asked Maria. I know there are experimental reactors hidden around the world. Military fusion plants, research installations, space-based power collectors. Sarah pulled up another display showing energy calculations. Even if we could access every power source in the solar system, it would barely be enough. And that's assuming the anchor design actually works. How long would it take to build? Asked Dr. Williams, under normal circumstances. 10 years, maybe 15? We would need to design entirely new technologies, build massive infrastructure, test everything multiple times. We don't have 10 years, said General Morrison. We have 25 days. Sarah stared at him. 25 days is impossible. Even if we had unlimited resources and every scientist on Earth working on it, we couldn't build something like this in 25 days. What if we didn't build it from scratch? Asked Maria quietly. What if we used existing infrastructure and modified it? What do you mean? Maria stood and began pacing around the lab. The Large Hadron Collider in Europe, the Fusion Research Station on the Moon, the orbital power collectors, the deep space communication arrays. What if we linked them all together into one massive system? Sarah considered this. The power distribution alone would be a nightmare. We would need to run cables and transmission lines across half the solar system. We have the industrial base, said General Morrison. 50 years of space development. Mining operations in the asteroid belt. Manufacturing stations throughout the system. If we mobilized everything, it would still be incredibly dangerous, Sarah warned. We would be working with forces that could destroy entire planets if something went wrong. and we would have no time to test anything. What's the alternative? Asked Maria. Let them relocate us to their colony worlds and hope they treat us. Well? Sarah looked around the room at the desperate faces staring back at her. These people were asking her to attempt something that violated every principle of careful scientific research. They wanted her to build a device that could change the fundamental nature of reality itself, and they wanted her to do it in less than a month. I would need complete authority over every scientific installation in the solar system, she said finally. Every physicist, every engineer, every technician. And I would need access to classified projects that most governments don't admit exist. Done, said Maria immediately, and I would need materials. Exotic matter, superconducting cables, quantum processors, things that might not even exist yet. The asteroid mining companies have been collecting rare elements for decades, said General Morrison. And the military has stockpiles of experimental materials. Most importantly, Sarah continued, I would need everyone to understand that this is a desperate gamble. The odds of success are maybe 1 in 100. The odds of accidentally destroying our solar system are much higher. Doctor, said Maria, sitting down across from her, 3 days ago, Zephyrian ships started systematically destroying our cities. New York is gone, London is gone, Tokyo is gone. They're not just relocating us anymore. They're killing anyone who refuses to cooperate. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. I didn't know. We've been keeping it quiet to prevent panic, but the truth is we're facing extinction. They've decided we're too much trouble to relocate. They're just going to eliminate us and use our solar system for their project. The room was silent except for the humming of Sarah's computers. She looked at the equations floating in her displays, the theoretical models she had worked on for decades. All of it had been academic before, interesting puzzles with no practical application. Now it was the difference between humanity's survival and extinction. I'll need a complete list of every power source in the solar system, she said finally. Every reactor, every solar collector, every fusion plant. I'll need transportation to visit the key sites personally. And I'll need the best engineers from every major space agency. You'll have whatever you need, promised Maria. When do we start? Asked General Morrison. Sarah looked at the countdown timer on her wall display. 24 days and 16 hours? Until the Zephyrian fleet reached Earth. We started 3 days ago, she said. We just didn't know it yet. Over the next 6 hours, Sarah's quiet laboratory transformed into the command center for the most ambitious project in human history. Engineers arrived from around the world. Scientists abandoned their research to work on the reality anchor. Military officials coordinated resource allocation on a scale never before attempted. The plan that emerged was insane by any rational measure. They would link every major power source in the solar system into a single network. The Large Hadron Collider would be modified to create exotic particles. The lunar fusion reactors would provide raw energy. The orbital solar collectors would feed power into the system. At the center of it all would be a massive array built from salvaged materials and experimental technology. It would look like junk to anyone who saw it, but it would contain some of the most advanced physics ever attempted by human science. The Zephyrians will think we're building some kind of last-ditch weapon, said General Morrison as they reviewed the plans. Let them think that, replied Sarah. The longer they underestimate us, the better our chances. As the meeting broke up and people hurried off to begin their impossible tasks, Maria stayed behind with Sarah. Doctor, she said quietly, do you really think this can work? Sarah looked at the equations one more time. The math was elegant, beautiful, even, but math was not reality. Ask me again in 24 days, she said. If we're all still alive, then it worked. Outside the laboratory windows, the night sky looked the same as always. But somewhere out there, 40 Zephyrian ships were approaching, confident in their technological superiority. They had no idea that the primitive humans were about to attempt something that would change the rules of the game entirely. Sarah Chun picked up her coffee cup and got back to work. She had 24 days to build a device that could lock the laws of physics in place and drag the mighty Zephyrian Empire down to humanity's level. It was impossible. But then again, so was everything else humans had ever accomplished. Captain Vexra stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the primitive human construction grow larger on his viewing screen. For 3 weeks, he had observed the creatures scurrying around their solar system like insects building a nest. They had connected their crude power stations with cables and transmission lines. They had built a massive structure near their moon that looked like metal junk held together with hope. "Sir," said Subcommander Krilna, "intelligence reports that the humans have linked 90% of their power grid to that central structure. Our analysts believe they are building some kind of weapon." Vexra made the clicking sound that meant amusement. A weapon? Made from human technology? What could they possibly create that would threaten the Empire? The bridge crew shared his laughter. The human construction was impressive for such a primitive species, but it was still crude beyond belief. Thick cables ran between planets like a spider web. The central structure looked like it had been built from spare parts and scrap metal. Their finest achievement looked like garbage compared to the elegant crystal ships of the Zephyrian fleet. "Sir," called Communications Officer Zeplo, "we are receiving another transmission from the human leaders. They are requesting a meeting to discuss surrender terms." Surrender terms? Vexra considered this. The humans had ignored all previous communications. Perhaps they were finally accepting reality. What exactly are they saying? They claim to have important information about their solar system that could be valuable to our construction project. They want to negotiate for the survival of their species. Vexra looked at the tactical display showing his 40 ships spread throughout the human system. The creatures had shown more spirit than he expected, but they could not possibly threaten his fleet. Perhaps it was time to end this charade. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Let me speak to their leaders." The main screen lit up showing a room full of humans. Vexra recognized some of them from intelligence reports. Maria Santos, the Space Operations Director. General Morrison, their military commander. Secretary General Al-Rashid, their supposed leader. "Humans," Vexra said in his formal tone, "you wish to discuss surrender." "Captain Vexra," said Secretary General Al-Rashid, "we want to propose an arrangement that benefits both our species." "Speak." "Our solar system contains resources you may not be aware of. Rare elements in the asteroid belt. Unique energy patterns from our sun. Things that could make your construction project more efficient." Vexra was not impressed. The Empire's surveys had mapped every useful resource in the system decades ago. "Your offer is pointless. We already know what this system contains." "But do you know about the quantum anomalies?" asked Maria Santos. "The unusual space-time distortions." "Near Jupiter?" "The gravitational irregularities that could affect your megastructure?" This got Vexra's attention. Quantum anomalies could indeed cause problems for large construction projects. "Explain these anomalies." "We would be happy to share all our data," said General Morrison, "in exchange for allowing our population to remain in the outer planets. We could even assist with your construction as a protected workforce." Vexra considered this. The humans were probably lying about anomalies that did not exist. But if there was even a small chance they possessed useful information, it might be worth investigating. "Very well," he said finally. "Prepare your data for transmission. But understand this offer does not change your ultimate fate. You will still be relocated when our project begins." "Of course," said Al-Rashid quickly. "We just hope to earn better treatment for our cooperation." The transmission ended, and Vexra turned to his science officer. "Now, Vel, prepare a full scan of the system. Look for any quantum anomalies or space-time distortions the humans might have detected." "Yes, sir." "Should we also scan their construction project?" "No need. Whatever they are building, it poses no threat to us. Focus on the areas they mentioned." As his ship moved deeper into the human system, Vexra felt confident about the situation. The humans had finally accepted their place, and were trying to bargain for mercy. Their crude construction project was probably just a desperate attempt to build something that looked impressive, hoping to convince the Empire they had value as allies. 3 days later, the Zephyrian fleet was positioned throughout the solar system when Dr. Sarah Chun pressed the final activation button in her control center on Luna Station. For 24 days, humanity had worked without sleep. They had connected every power source in their solar system to the massive device floating near Earth's moon. Nuclear reactors, fusion plants, solar collectors, geothermal stations, even the experimental quantum generators hidden in secret military bases, all of it fed into the reality anchor. Sarah watched her displays as energy levels climbed higher than anything in human history. The power flowing through the system was enough to run entire civilizations. She had built something that pushed against the fundamental forces that held the universe together. Power at 90%, reported Marcus from his station. All connections stable. Quantum field generators online, called out Dr. Williams from the physics station. Exotic matter containment holding steady. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the Zephyrian ships scattered throughout their solar system. 40 crystal vessels, each one capable of destroying entire planets. In a few minutes, they would learn what it felt like to fight fair. Power at 95%, Marcus announced. Approaching activation threshold. All stations report. Ready, said Maria Santos from the command center on Earth. Sarah took a deep breath and placed her hand on the final control. 24 days of impossible work had led to this moment. Either her theory was correct and the reality anchor would work, or they were about to destroy their own solar system in the biggest explosion in human history. Activating reality anchor in 3.2. Now. The universe screamed. That was the only way Sarah could describe what happened when the reality anchor came online. Space itself seemed to twist and fight against the device as it forced the fundamental constants of physics to lock in place. Energy readings spiked, beyond the scale of her instruments. Then suddenly everything went quiet. Status report, Sarah called out, checking her displays frantically. Reality anchor is stable, reported Dr. Williams with amazement in her voice. The field is expanding as predicted. Range is now... My God, it covers the entire inner solar system. On the tactical display, Sarah could see the invisible field spreading outward from their device. It washed over Mars, past the asteroid belt, and continued growing. Within an hour, it would cover the entire area where the Zephyrian ships were positioned. Captain Vexra felt his ship shudder and looked around in confusion. His bridge crew was checking their instruments with growing alarm. "Sir," called Navigation Officer Ralku, "our drive systems are malfunctioning. The spacefold engines are not responding." "What?" Vexra moved to the navigation station. "Run a full diagnostic." "I have, sir." "All systems show normal operation, but the engines will not engage. It is as if space itself is refusing to fold." Sub-Commander Krilno looked up from her station with worry in her crystalline features. "Sir, our weapons are also malfunctioning. The quantum disruptors will not fire. The particle beams are offline." "That is impossible," Vexra said. "Our weapons are based on fundamental forces. They cannot simply stop working." "Sir," called out the science officer, "I am detecting a massive energy field emanating from the human construction. It appears to be affecting the quantum substrate of local spacetime." Vexra stared at his displays in growing disbelief. His magnificent ship, pride of the Zephyrian Empire, was suddenly no better than a metal box floating in space. His reality-bending weapons had become useless. His faster-than-light engines could not engage. "Sir," said the communications officer urgently, "we are receiving reports from all ships in the fleet. Every vessel is experiencing the same malfunctions. The humans had done something impossible. They had built a device that neutralized every technological advantage the Empire possessed. 40 of the most advanced ships ever built were now trapped in normal space, subject to the same physical laws as primitive chemical rockets. And that was when the human fleet appeared. They came from everywhere at once. From behind asteroids, from the shadow of planets, from hiding places throughout the solar system. Hundreds of ships that should not have existed, built in secret during the 24 days of frantic construction. They were ugly ships, Sarah thought as she watched them on her tactical display. Crude metal hulls welded together from industrial materials. Chemical rocket engines that burned fuel like ancient spacecraft. Kinetic weapons that fired simple metal projectiles. Nuclear missiles with primitive guidance systems. But they worked. In the reality anchor's field, simple technology was the only technology that functioned. All ships, transmitted General Morrison from the command vessel, you are cleared to engage. Show them what humans can do when the playing field is level. The Battle of Seoul began with a sound like thunder as hundreds of human ships opened fire simultaneously. Kinetic projectiles moving at incredible speeds slammed into crystalline hulls that could no longer regenerate. Nuclear missiles detonated against shields that could no longer bend electromagnetic radiation. Captain Vexra watched in horror as his beautiful ships began to explode. The elegant crystal hulls cracked and shattered under the impact of primitive human weapons. Ships that had seemed indestructible were torn apart by simple explosives and metal projectiles. "Return fire!" he ordered desperately. "We cannot, sir," replied the weapons officer. "Our systems will not function in this field." "Then use the backup systems, the emergency weapons." "Sir, all of our weapons rely on quantum manipulation or energy field distortion. None of them work under normal physics." For the first time in his long life, Vexra understood what it meant to be helpless. His advanced civilization had become so dependent on reality-bending technology that they had forgotten how to fight with simple weapons. They were like warriors who had trained only with magic swords suddenly forced to fight with sticks. The human ships swarmed around the disabled Zephyrian fleet like angry insects. They moved with the desperate fury of a species that had nothing left to lose. Every shot was aimed with the precision of people fighting for their home, their families, their very existence. "Sir," called the communications officer, "the flagship Eternal Glory is requesting permission to retreat beyond the energy field." "Granted," Vexra replied immediately. "All ships withdraw to the edge of the human field." But retreat was not as simple as it sounded. Without their space-folding drives, the Zephyrian ships could only move with normal engines designed for maneuvering, not long-distance travel. They were trapped in the reality anchor's field with enemies who knew how to fight in normal space. Sarah Chun watched the battle from her control room and felt a mix of pride and terror. Her impossible device was working. The Zephyrian ships were helpless, their advanced technology useless, but she could also see the price humanity was paying. Human ships were dying too, destroyed by the few Zephyrian weapons that still functioned on basic principles. "How long can we maintain the field?" asked Maria Santos over the communication link. "Unknown," Sarah replied honestly. "We are using more power than any human system has ever generated. We might have hours or days before something overloads." "Then we better make it count." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, 37 Zephyrian ships had been destroyed or captured. Only 3 had managed to escape beyond the reality anchor's field, and they fled immediately toward the edge of the solar system. Captain Vexra was among the survivors, his damaged ship limping away from the field at sublight speed. He stared at the tactical display showing the wreckage of his fleet and tried to understand what had happened. The humans had not just defeated them, they had made it impossible for the Empire to fight back. They had created a weapon that turned the galaxy's most advanced technology into useless decoration. "Sir," said his communications officer quietly, "what do we tell the High Council?" Vexra looked at the display one more time at the crude human device that had destroyed everything he believed about the superiority of Zephyrian technology. "Tell them," he said slowly, "that the zoo animals have learned to bite back." High Counselor Zarthal stood before the great crystal dome of the Imperial Palace and stared out at the city below. For 3,000 years, the capital of the Zephyrian Empire had been a symbol of order and control. Elegant spires reached toward the sky, built from living crystal that responded to thought itself. Gravity streams carried citizens through the air in graceful arcs. The very air sparkled with energy fields that bent reality to the Empire's will. Today, for the first time in millennia, that perfect order was shattered. "High Counselor," said his aide, approaching with obvious nervousness, "the emergency session is ready to begin." Zarthal nodded and walked toward the council chamber. Word of the disaster at Sol had reached the capital 3 days ago. The report seemed impossible, an entire Zephyrian fleet destroyed by primitive humans using crude kinetic weapons. But the survivors' testimonies were consistent, and the sensor recordings did not lie. The council chamber was filled with an energy Zarthal had never felt before. Fear. For the first time in the Empire's history, their counselors were afraid. "Members of the High Council," Zarthal began as he took his place at the center of the crystalline circle, "you have all read Captain Vexera's report. I have called this emergency session to determine our response to the human threat." "Threat?" spoke Counselor Dalmor, her voice carrying the harmonic that indicated disbelief. "High Counselor, surely you do not consider these primitives a genuine threat to the Empire?" Zarthal activated the chamber's main display, showing the tactical records from the Battle of Sol. 37 ships destroyed. 3 escaped. Our most advanced fleet reduced to scrap metal by creatures we dismissed as zoo animals. The chamber fell silent as the recordings played. Crystal ships exploding under barrages of simple metal projectiles. Zephyrian weapons failing to fire while human missiles tore through their formations. The proud fleet of the Empire fleeing, in panic from opponents they had considered beneath notice. "The humans have developed something called a reality anchor," Zarthal continued. "A device that locks the fundamental constants of physics in place within its field of influence. Our technology becomes useless. Their primitive weapons become deadly. But surely this is a localized effect," suggested Counselor Nexial. "They built this device using their entire solar system's resources. They cannot possibly replicate it elsewhere. Can they not?" Zarthal changed the display to show intelligence reports from across the galaxy. 3 days ago we lost contact with the border station at Kepler 442. Yesterday, the mining operation at Volf 359 went silent. This morning, our patrol fleet at Gliese 667C failed to report. Murmurs of concern rippled through the council chamber. These were systems far from Earth, spread across hundreds of light-years of space. "You believe the humans are somehow responsible?" asked Dalmor. "I believe we have underestimated them for 50 years, Zarthal replied. "We thought they were contained in their solar system. But what if they have been building hidden installations? What if they have been preparing for this moment for decades?" The truth was more complex than the Council knew. In the days following the Battle of Sol, humanity had indeed begun spreading their impossible technology to other systems. But not in the way the Empire imagined. Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the communication center of Luna Station and watched the screens showing signals coming from across the galaxy. Her reality anchor had done more than just neutralize the Zephyrian fleet. It had sent a message to every intelligent species in the Empire's territory. The invincible overlords could be beaten. "We're receiving confirmation from 17 star systems," reported Marcus. "The signal reached them, and they're responding." The signal was simple but revolutionary. Complete technical specifications for building reality anchors. The physics equations Sarah had spent 20 years developing. Construction blueprints that any industrial civilization could follow. In 3 days, humanity had shared the secret of their victory with every species that had suffered under imperial rule. "The Kepler system just came online," called out Dr. Williams from another station. "Their anchor field is stable and expanding. Same for Volf 359, added another technician. The Metherian resistance used their mining equipment to build the exotic matter generators. Sarah smiled despite her exhaustion. The Empire had made a critical mistake 50 years ago when they established all those nature preserves. They had left dozens of intelligent species scattered across the galaxy, each one nursing grievances against their captors. each one waiting for a chance to fight back. Now they had that chance. On the world of Kepler 442b, the Glorian beings who had been dismissed as simple tree-dwellers revealed the technology they had been secretly developing for centuries. Their reality anchor came online just as a Zephyrian patrol ship arrived to investigate their silence. The Imperial vessel found itself trapped in normal space, facing an opponent who had learned to fight with weapons that worked regardless of how advanced their enemies were. At Volf 359, the Metherian mining colonies turned their industrial equipment into weapons of war. Asteroid movers became kinetic bombardment platforms, mining lasers became ship killers. When the Empire's response fleet arrived, they found a system ready for war, the pattern repeated across the galaxy. Species that had been conquered, relocated, or designated as nature preserves were rising up simultaneously. And each one now possessed the technology to neutralize the Empire's greatest advantages. Back in the Imperial capital, High Counselor Zarthal was receiving reports that grew worse by the hour. "High Counselor," said his aide, "the Vega system has gone dark. Long-range sensors detect massive energy signatures consistent with reality anchor technology." "How many systems have we lost contact with?" Zarthal asked. 43 confirmed. "Possibly more in the outer territories?" Zarthal felt something he had never experienced before: helplessness. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia was falling apart in a matter of days. And it was all because they had underestimated a species they considered primitive. "What are our military options?" he asked General Kexmore, the Empire's supreme military commander. "Limited," the general replied grimly. "Our fleets are designed around technological superiority. When that advantage is removed, we have no effective response. Our warriors have not trained for equal combat in centuries." "Then we adapt," said Counselor Dalmore. "We develop new weapons that work within reality anchor fields. We relearn the old ways of warfare. That will take years," General Kexmore replied. "And we may not have years. Reports indicate the humans are helping other species develop not just defensive anchors but mobile ones. They are building fleets that can carry this technology with them." The full implications of this hit the Council like a physical blow. A mobile reality anchor would be unstoppable. It could approach any Imperial system, neutralize all defenses, and attack with primitive but effective weapons. The Empire's technological superiority would mean nothing. "We must negotiate," said Counselor Nexiel quietly, "before this spreads further." "Negotiate?" Dalmore's voice carried the harmonic of outrage. "With primitives?" "With the species that just destroyed our most advanced fleet," Zarthal corrected. "The species that has turned our own conquered worlds against us." 3 days later, an Imperial diplomatic vessel approached Earth's solar system. It was a small ship designed for speed rather than combat. Its captain had orders to request a ceasefire and open negotiations with the human leadership. The ship was stopped at the edge of the reality anchor field by a human patrol squadron. The vessels that surrounded the Imperial craft were crude-looking things, welded together from industrial materials and armed with simple kinetic weapons. But in the anchor field, they were as dangerous as any ship in the galaxy. Maria Santos sat in the command center of the newly constructed Humanity Station, orbiting Earth just outside the Moon's gravity well. The facility had been built in the weeks following the battle, using materials salvaged from destroyed Zephyrian ships. It was a symbol of humanity's new status in the galaxy. "Director Santos," called the communications officer, "the Imperial vessel is requesting permission to approach. They say they have a diplomatic message from the High Council." "Let them come," Maria replied, "but keep our weapons trained on them, and make sure they understand that any attempt to use advanced technology will be met with immediate destruction." The Imperial ship docked with Humanity Station an hour later. The Zephyrian ambassador who emerged was unlike any alien the humans had met before. Where Captain Vexra had been arrogant and dismissive, Ambassador Naltek seemed almost humble. "Director Santos," he said through the translation device, "I bring greetings from the High Council and an offer of negotiation." What kind of negotiation? Maria asked. The Empire recognizes that the situation has changed. We wish to discuss terms for coexistence, Maria almost laughed. 6 months ago, these same aliens had announced they were going to relocate humanity to make room for a construction project. Now they wanted to discuss coexistence. What exactly is the Empire offering? She asked. Recognition of human sovereignty over this solar system. Formal admission to the galactic community. Access to certain imperial technologies that do not threaten our security. And in return, you cease sharing reality-anchored technology with other species. You recall your technical assistance teams from rebel systems. You help us restore order to the galaxy. Maria looked at the alien diplomat and shook her head. You still don't understand, do you? I do not follow. This isn't about us anymore. You spent 3,000 years conquering, relocating, and dismissing other species. You turned intelligent beings into zoo animals. You thought you could do the same to us? Maria stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at the stars that humans could now reach freely. But we gave those other species something you never gave them: hope and the tools to fight back. Even if we wanted to help you restore your empire, it's too late. The galaxy has changed. Ambassador Nowtek was quiet for a long moment. What do you want, then? We want you to leave, all of you. Go back to your home systems and stay there. Let the other species decide their own futures? Maybe in a few generations, when you've learned to treat other beings as equals instead of curiosities, we can talk about coexistence. And if the Empire refuses? Maria smiled, and there was something in that expression that reminded the ambassador uncomfortably of a predator showing its teeth. Then you'll discover what happens when a few hundred species with nothing left to lose all have access to reality-anchored technology. Your empire will fall, one system at a time, until there's nothing left but the memory of what happens to bullies who push too hard. 3 months later, the Zephyrian Empire announced a general withdrawal from all conquered territories. They claimed it was a voluntary restructuring of imperial policy, but everyone in the galaxy knew the truth. The species they had dismissed as primitive had made continued rule impossible. Dr. Sarah June stood on the observation deck of the new research station orbiting Mars and watched a human exploration fleet prepare for departure. These ships would carry reality-anchored technology to the far reaches of the galaxy, ensuring that no species would ever again face the kind of oppression humanity had endured. Her impossible device had done more than save her species. It had changed the fundamental balance of power in the galaxy. The age of the great empires was ending, replaced by something new, an alliance of free worlds, each one sovereign and equal. The humans had been a joke to the Empire, a primitive species living in a cosmic zoo, worthy only of study and eventual disposal. But jokes, Sarah reflected, sometimes had the last laugh. And this one would echo across the galaxy for centuries to come.